Hello, everyone. Montse, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
It's been a little while, and there's been some. You've gone through auditions since we last had like our, coaching sessions and group calls.
No.
You were off auditioning, and then there was deliberation, and there was, you know,
It feels like another lifetime ago, but yes, yeah, yeah, so
and
much.
you have a new future. So why don't you tell us where
No.
you're going and when and what you're
Yes.
studying?
Yes. I've decided to go with USC, University of Southern California. Yes, Cali, School of Dramatic Arts. I was doing my MFA auditions, so for Masters in Fine Arts and Acting. Classes start August 20th, so it's cutting it close, but that's how I am. So
You arrive a week before, you're splashing on the scene. It's great.
great. Yeah.
Moving
Yeah.
in. I think that is very exciting. Congratulations. You have worked so hard and in such good faith and in such integrity with your artistry. It was no surprise. You're going to a great school and you're going to have a lot of resources there.
Yeah, right? I mean, it's so interesting because USC actually it wasn't on my radar at all, actually. And then it wasn't until through the process of like really talking to other people and thinking a lot more about TV and film and just Los Angeles in general that now the more research I'm doing, the more I'm like, oh, yes, this actually feels very in line with what I want to be doing.
Yeah, I'm excited for you. Now, let's kick off with this whole MFA mentality. You have to choose to apply for a master's.
Yes.
Why did you choose to apply for a master's? What do you want from this?
It is a
Why?
choice, yes. Um, well, my undergrad was in, it was still in theater performance. It was here in Canada, so I moved to Vancouver for it. And it was very devised like theater collective making. So I feel like my skills, and it was very, which I wanted at the time. It was very like you're an artist first. Theater is the avenue right now, and performance and acting can be, but it's really still about creation. Um, and so I graduated in 2020, so right when the pandemic was happening. And so then I kind of needed a few years to assess how I was feeling. Also, pandemic was happening, so everything was in flux. And it wasn't until maybe a year ago where I was like, I think now is the right time to deepen
Hmm.
my acting, specifically my acting practice, because I was doing gigs and working, um, but the type of deepening that I wanted and want, I wasn't able to do just like on a 6-week contract,
Right.
um, especially when it was so much about just like going gig to gig. And I'm not from Canada, so at the same time it was also like I actually am interested in exploring my career outside of being in Canada right now and see where that takes me as well. So I was also really like if I'm going to do a master's, I want to do it outside of Canada.
Tell
Um,
me a little bit about tell us a little bit about your background. Like as far as did you have any parents that were in the arts? How did you get introduced to all this? Was it really just kind of you pushing a vision that you had for yourself? What were your main inspirations? How did you find yourself here? Huge question.
oof, oof. No, I mean, I did grow up in a very kind of, I guess like I did grow up seeing a lot of theater, operas, orchestra. So it's always been in my kind of circle and periphery. My parents aren't artists, but they are, um, I think, very kind of individually in their own lives have kind of been the person in their family that has stepped outside of what is the traditional thing for their family. So I do think growing up with them really helped me never question whether I wanted to be in the arts or not. Like it was never being off the grain or whatever
Right.
that phrase is. Like it was very
Absolutely.
like, yeah, I want to do arts, and my mom and my dad were like, yeah, okay, cool. Um, so in that way, I was very supported. And then I would say probably my whole life, I've just been very interested in acting and singing. I mean, I was obsessed with, wanting to be Hilary Duff. Like, I don't know. Like I was like, I'm gonna be on the Disney Channel. It's gonna happen. When I turned 8 and it didn't happen, I was devastated. Uh, and but so like mix that in with like coming from a culture that is very also just theatrical and a lot of like background in doing things that are very presentational and performative and fun. Um, and so it wasn't until probably when I was 14 or 15 where I was like, oh, it's acting, not singing or even like directing. I was interested in. So I was like, it's more acting for me right now, or performing, being a performer.
Mhm.
Um, and then I just followed it.
That's great. Look, that's what you do. That's what you do. And you find out what's next. Where am I going
Yeah.
next? If you're following it, you'll find something,
Yeah, and I always knew, I went to an incredible high school program for theater. And so
which
it,
was,
it was called Western Canada High School, shout out, from in Calgary, Alberta. And it was a great program because it was my drama teacher there. She really instilled the idea that to be a working artist was very reasonable or like doable. Like it wasn't this incredibly difficult thing, like as if engineering was easier. Like it was kind of like she leveled them out and was like, both are hard. Um, and so I knew that I was really focused in theater for a while. Like I was like, oh, if I'm an actor in theater, I can actually see how other actors and artists are making a living doing this, which was eye-opening for me because I did have an idea of like only being on the Disney Channel before
yeah,
that.
it's fair. It's fair.
Yeah.
Well, so cool. So fast forward to a year ago, you decide,
Mhm.
I think it's time to put my name in the hat for these MFAs, right?
Yeah.
So what, I guess, was there a catalyst to that, or was it just an inner spontaneous thought, an inner knowing? Was there someone who talked to you about it? How'd you decide doing it?
No, I think it was, I mean, in the back of my head, I always knew because probably in my third year of undergrad, I was like, oh, I'm going to want to be doing a master's eventually. Because like I said, my program was very around devising new work. Um, and then maybe a year and a half into the pandemic and kind of finally getting a taste of like the gigging and kind of freelance artist that I
AKA the industry
yeah, the industry
actually works.
just like being like, okay, this is what I'm doing and going from project to project. And then I think it was around, I don't know, it was in the winter time, not this last winter, but the one before, where I felt like growth wise, I wasn't growing as much as I was project to project in the way that I wanted to. And I just had a lot of questions and a lot of feelings of like intense, like I wanted to be intense again in
Yeah.
what I was doing and really focused and really like, this is where I want my energy to be, instead of in like, here's a bunch of different self tapes and a bunch of different auditions and go and only be seen for these characters and um the 3 week process. And it became very like, this is one thing, but I'm actually artistically feeling like I'm not growing a lot.
Yes.
um and wanting to fail, I really felt like there was a pressure that I was like, oh, I kind of want to be in a room where I'm absolutely terrible and like fail super badly, but am in a space and context where it's okay, uh, which is not the case if you're just like gigging to gigging. And so that feeling, I was like, oh, now's the time. Also turning 20, I was at the time 24, and I was like, now's the time. I just feel like it's the moment.
That
So
is great. Yep,
yeah.
wonderful. Now I want to get a kind of view of your journey,
Yeah.
because you talked about, hey, USC is not where I thought I'd end up. It's not even, it wasn't even on my radar at first. Right? You had a journey to get there, right? So like, tell us about where you were when you first started the journey. Um, what were you thinking was your goal? How were you thinking the
Yeah.
process was going to go?
Oh, I was like, top dream school of my life is Yale. and and I was like, I'm gonna go there, and if I don't, it's you know,
Oh, boy.
tragic, and I'll never be an actor. Not actually, like that's me exaggerating, but there was like definitely a kernel of me feeling the prestige of the name, and because it's also free. So I was like, this is the package. I know people who have gone and are incredibly talented people. So I just had a frame of reference. Um, I had also done a residency there for at their CCAM unit. So I was very like, I know the campus. It was like the place. And then after that was New York. Like I was like, I want to be in New York. I am a huge city person, so I was very like, I love the dynamic and the cultural kind of aspect of being there. And because honestly, I think in general, my education and my awareness of master's programs were really either in Europe or in New York. As masters, I didn't really think even of Los Angeles as like the place to go to study. And then as I was beginning to do all the research and really looking at, for example, even on your page and seeing like that there were other schools that students had gone to, and then really researching different profs and different kind of avenues, USC came up, and then I started reading more about it, and I was like, oh, this is actually like really like it's a legit school, and it has a program, and like, oh, look at all these amazing people, and so then kind of felt out Los Angeles a bit, and applied to CalArts as well. And so yeah, I kind of had like I applied to 5 different schools and was
Okay,
like, okay,
yeah.
I'm gonna
What schools? This was great. What schools did you
yeah.
apply to?
I did Yale, Juilliard, Tisch, um, CalArts, USC, and I lied. I did more. I did Columbia, and um, there was one more. And in London, Lambda.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. And did
Yeah.
you audition for all of these in the same city? Did you do multiple city auditions?
So Columbia's for my round. Columbia, the first round, if you wanted to be in New York, it was online, like a self tape, not even like a live online. So I just sent self tapes for Columbia Lambda, which is why I was blanking because it was just that. All the other ones I auditioned for in person in New York.
Cool.
So they had touring.
Um, all right, before we get into the audition rooms and what happened, let's lead up to it.
Yeah, leading up to it.
Get in touch with us. I guess you saw us on videos or something.
Yeah, yeah. I think I literally just typed in Google like grad school acting prep or something like that, and you instantly came up. Um, I am still remembering. I just
I'm
remembered
gonna
in my
look at
face.
my first ever interaction. I'm gonna find out.
I feel like I remember seeing you have like an audition video, or maybe it was John. Someone has an audition video where they are doing a monologue.
Yep,
I can't
that's
remember.
John. You
Yeah,
talked with John first, and then we talked.
that's yeah. So I remember seeing that video, and then I was like, "Oh, John!" And because I was still in my like Yale, uh, knowing that he had gone there too, I was
Yep,
like,
yep, yep.
"Great!" And so yes, Yes, that's the that's how it happened. And then I remember it took me forever to find monologues, just like so long. So we were talking back and
Yeah,
forth.
you went back and forth about monologues and
Oh
trying
my
to help.
gosh.
How was that process? So tell us about that, right? Because everybody around the world wants to find monologues. And
Yeah,
it's different for based on where you're located, based on your experience. Like some people are just super like, I'm gonna go find everything, but other people are like, where are they? So
totally.
how did you find yours?
Well, I mean, I knew going in that I of two, which was one classical, one contemporary. I knew for sure I was like, I want to do Juliet and I want to do this Sarah Kane piece. And I knew those because the Sarah Kane piece I had read when I was like 15 and it just has stayed with me forever. And then the Juliet one because I've done so many different versions of that show that I know it and I love the text. So I had those. My problem was the other two. And that was just like asking people at like looking online, every single database. I read like so many plays. Then I realized that you don't need to read the play, just skim. Then I started skimming. Then I asked all my actor friends. Then I asked like directors that I'd worked with of like what they thought. Um, yeah, I was like, I had connections.
Tell
I
by
was
your
like,
body language, this was frustrating for you.
yeah, I was so annoyed. I was like, come
Like,
on, this is ridiculous.
these people, I got these people, I'm reading. I don't need to be reading. I'm skimming.
I felt like I was like, ask me anything about these playwrights, and I can tell you their body of work now because I'm like so read. But what I was really struggling with was the combo of all of them together and the length. So I kept feeling like some that I had picked were um too short, so then I had to change them. So it was more about trying them on and maybe for like a week working with them and then being like, nah, no, it just doesn't uh fit. And I'm thinking now that it was also, I remember I really wanted a monologue where I could speak in Spanish. And so for the first time, I was like, for the first while, I thought, oh, I'll find just like a Latine playwright and it'll be just fully in Spanish. Then I was looking at different playwrights. And then I ended up just actually transcribing the Sarah Kane one in a little bit of Spanish in there instead. Um, so yeah, it was just like playing around, mixing, trying to be like, okay, uh, which kind of ones are too similar or in the same kind of realm.
Mhm.
Um, and
Trying to
and
find.
yeah, yeah.
Did you
So
feel like you had to find four pieces that were totally different, or did you feel like you just had to have a pair that contrasted well together, even if all four were not totally separate?
I I really tried the pairing, um, and then I remember this now, and then I realized that um, depending on which pairing, though, I would then be like my monologues would be very short. And so I did remember thinking, okay, I have my pairings, but then I thought some days, because I knew I was going for a week, like back to back. And so I knew I was like, do I really want to set myself up where I have to do the same two every day? Or do I want like four or three at least where I'm like, these can go interchangeably depending on my
When you're
energy
doing,
level.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
And so
I would say like three. I had like for sure Sarah Kane. I was like, that's for sure the contemporary, the first choice. But then my classics, I was like, ooh, actually, it really depended. I kind of switched them up.
you're like whatever you're feeling, but they both
Yeah.
contrast well with the
Yeah.
Sarah Kane. So what's your take on like which one you did first. Did you always do the same one first? What's your philosophy on what would you tell someone about the order of the piece?
Yeah, I experimented with that too. I remember I did end up choosing a set order for the first two. Obviously, then once callbacks were happening, it was like whatever. But for the first um go, I did have like a very set order because I found that for me going in, I'm already so energized and kind of anxious and in a place of high anxiety excitement that it's easier to just lead with that type of energy in my monologue than like a super.
Yeah, right.
So I was like, it's easier for me to start here and then kind of gradually go into the next than to start with like a different set of energy and then build myself up.
That's interesting. I've never heard it articulated that way, but that also kind of matched with me. My philosophy, or what I kind of subscribed to, was like whatever my best piece is, I'm going to lead with. And that's kind of was like, okay, put your best foot forward. And it just so happened to be, though, that what I've always felt my best piece to be, if I look back, it kind of was that more higher energy. It was what I was in the mood to do. I knew it was going to be. And then and my second piece was much more of a, heavy hitter or whatever it may be. But that's just a coincidence. I didn't actually think that consciously.
Oh, I thought you were going to go somewhere else with it, which was going to be that what you thought your best piece wasn't your best. No,
no, it was the best.
You were like, no, this is actually the good one. But no, I knew because there's one thing to be outside of the room and be prepping and whatever, but then literally the moment you're in the room, at least for me, I was like, so of course I'm going to lead with the monologue that then can help me in that mode.
Well, talk to me about this. So, you hadn't auditioned for MFA programs before. Had you done any of these types of auditions before? Was this what you would consider your first go at this type of stuff?
I did audition for my undergrads, but like not at this level at all. So
yeah.
I'm gonna say it was my first time, and it was my first time ever being in person, because I started doing kind of all these other auditions a lot online. So it was my first time being like in a room with 150 people waiting to go in.
It is a different experience, right? I mean, auditioning is a thing, but even within the broader term auditioning, top drama school auditions, yeah. Okay. So it's not like, and some people who got rejected the previous year and are going again this year, they know what it's like. You did not necessarily have this as a background. So that's also working on you.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You handled that. How did you because clearly you delivered good work.
It's so interesting because I will say for anyone who's watching, if you're doing the like I was like, I'm doing the tour, like I'm just every day, it's like every day I have an audition. And it is very true. Like I did feel so much better towards the end than I did towards the beginning. And I would say that what I learned throughout that process was actually how little prep time I actually needed. I think I really, I think I was very caught off guard when, I would be planning my day, for example, and if my audition was at 5 p.m., for example, for the Yale one, I remember it was in the evening. And so I had the full day before that. And I was super stressed about, not wanting to over kind of compensate and be super like drowning out this like long prep process and then be tired by like 2 p.m. But at the same time, I was like, I don't want to drink too much coffee because I'm already too nervous. Like, so it was like really long in the day of anxiety and excitement. And then to get there and be like, okay, finally, it's 5 p.m. to then realize like they're running 2 hours behind. And then, oh, when are you going to actually be called into your little group? And so it's just a lot of waiting. And I realized um, for myself, I was like, I actually had to just be like, okay, I'm actually not like, I'm just going to tap out, and they call me when they call me. And I know that in 5 minutes, I'll be fine. Like, I can trust my body to just be ready because I've done the work. I don't need to be like in the zone for 20 hours or something.
So wise, so wise.
And so then as we were going on,
By the way, everyone who hears that from you, we don't understand it until we actually do it. Like, you've probably heard that before, either through
yeah,
our so we know intellectually we don't need to overhype this or whatever, but until you just blast through and overhype it way too much, and you're like, I'll
yeah,
just wait till I'm called, then you realize, okay, here's what's required of me, right?
exactly. And so it took that first one, and then literally, what is so funny now that I'm reflecting on it, that was my first one, and then super emotional, like very dramatic ending. Uh, and then I remember because that one was in New Haven, and then the next day was my USC one actually, and that was like, oh, for me USC was like, oh, I don't know, like sure, whatever. But I was so heartbroken from not making it to the end at the Yale one that I was so that morning, I remember I took the train back. I was running late. I ended up changing and putting on my makeup and contacts in the bathroom of the hotel that USC was doing. I warmed up in like 3 minutes. Um, and then I just went and did it. And then that's the one that now I'm going to, and that actually went really well. And
Really
that
crazy.
and so it was like
This is the
not
fun.
precious.
No, exactly, exactly. Oh, I can't wait to get to the work. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good. Uh, okay, so what else? Before we get all into USC and what happened in the audition room, how the rest of the schools go?
Yeah, I mean, I really did think Juilliard was incredibly organized. I was like, wow, this is the most like streamlined process they clearly know what they're doing. Um, so it was just a really long day because I made it to the end of for Juilliard, and so it was just like getting there at 7 in the morning and then constantly waiting for when your group would go and then the next round. And there was like, I think three different callbacks that one day, and then you wait a while, and then you have this final kind of interview. So it was just a lot of waiting, and then very, very intense moments of like, wow, this is happening, and then waiting again. And a lot of people. Juilliard's was the one that surprised me how many people start at the beginning and then they like trickle down as you keep going. But they had food. They had food. They had all of their like all of their students helping and like really cheering you on. And you always knew when roughly you would be kind of going like in the next hour or so. So it was never like, I literally have no idea when I'm going up, which was helpful. So that again, you're not on your adrenaline like constantly, like could be
Right,
now.
right.
And that one was really interesting too because yeah, there's just so many more people and there's more time to talk to different people. So that was the only audition I did where I was like, oh, I'm really actually like hanging out with people. And then Tish was funny but chaotic, very chaotic, very different than going from Juilliard, which is like this pristine, almost like clean environment. And then Tish was like, in their building, and the lobby had jazz music playing, and like no one knows when you're going, like they read off of like a little sheet your name, and it's like some student reading it, so it was very chaotic if they can't like read the writing. Like it was such a polarized experience, and I actually loved it. I was like, this is so funny to me too, but really interesting to know the difference of like vibes
Right.
right
Totally.
away. But by then I felt really confident because I'd already done three. The night before I was at Juilliard until 11:30 at night. and had my audition for Tish the next day at like 10 a.m. So I was just like, go, go, go. I've got it. And the Juilliard ones were really, they asked a lot of different things. So I also felt really comfortable with whatever Tish was going to ask me to do.
Yeah.
Um, and then by the end of doing then CalArts, I was like, I've been to this hotel. I already know how to get here. I already know where the bathroom is and like how to get ready. Like it was like, it's fine.
You made a choice this time to run late and get ready in the bathroom. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you were really sensitive to all the different like, vibes of each school,
Yeah.
how they ran their auditions.
Yes.
Nobody,
Yes.
nobody talks about that enough. Like you're gonna run into different environments. So
Yeah.
it's almost like you just have to trust yourself, I guess, in how you handle that. Some people like to kind of contain themselves no matter what different environment it is. Some people like to be able to chameleon maybe and just socialize at Juilliard, and do somewhere else. Like I think it's just about being sensitive to where you're at that day. No.
Totally. Totally. And I always had music, I had things to do if I got like I needed my own time, but um it was also I didn't this was a surprise to me, but you start if you're doing the tour, as I like to say, you start to recognize people because we're all doing it. So I started making friends by the end because I was like, I mean, I just saw you in Juilliard and I saw you at Yale. So hi. Like we're here. We're doing all of them at the same, that one week. So
Yeah.
that's kind of fun too, to be like, oh, you're also doing this school. Like, why did you choose this one? That kind of thing.
That's great. That's great. It sounds like you were very present and obviously, doing great work. You had training before you came to us. And
Yeah.
ever since, I remember in your early sessions and everything like this, you were doing good work. So what do you feel like really were the sessions even worth it? What did you even what did you get out of the sessions that you feel like were valuable?
Yeah, totally. That's funny. I loved that I worked with you, John, and Anula. So I got three different. Oh, and Stacy for
Yeah.
one session. So I felt that was really great because testing out my monologues with different people is just always helpful to hear that feedback, and it's practice. And for the two newer, like I picked my final two monologues, like the other two that I had no idea about, not until like late December. And so I remember then January feeling really like this is new material that I haven't spent as much time with. So it was really helpful to have these sessions with you all of not only doing them and just getting that experience, but also then talking about different ways of approaching them. Like exploration. It was more like exploration time, and I do way better when I'm doing it with someone who's then giving me their undivided attention and just focusing on me, like than just doing it by myself in my room. So it was super helpful. And I remember even with John, there was one session where we just did like exploration. Like I think we did the monologue once, and the rest of the hour it was just like exploring different things and working it, which was super helpful.
Yeah, it kind of expands your artistry, not just,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, your instrument is actually what you want to bring in the room. Of course, you want to bring in these pieces that you're passionate about and that you've worked really hard on. But in addition to that, they're going to play. They're going to want you to play.
Yeah,
We're going to go into that.
exactly.
But like, yeah, so I'm glad that you're just able to be an artist in a room with a coach, like, let's
Exactly.
go.
And it's accountability too. So that was what I knew I needed also, from the get-go. I was like, I really love the idea of a structured, on this day, we're doing our mock auditions so that I'm just like, great. I have to go and do that now. Like I need that extra, I wanted that extra because it's easier. Basically, it's just
Like,
easier to then do it because I'm like, great, there's someone who's holding me accountable.
exactly, just organized for you. And, kind of, I respond to that too, like, I know this is leading up to a deadline. I'm gonna, it just kind of keeps you pulled.
Yeah.
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 Very cool. All right. So, did it feel special at USC audition? Like the audition, was there any, how did
Yeah.
you feel what happened? Talk to us about it.
For the USC one, so I was auditioning in New York in that hotel that I couldn't find and all that. So I was already stressed. My eyes were puffy from crying the night before from like I was like a hot mess. And then I remember that I had Natsuko and Michelle Shea, and I think that's her last name, Shea. Yeah. And they were so like no bullshit energy. Like their energy was just so like, hey, how's it going? Like this is what we're doing today. Um and Natsuko, I remember especially, was kind of like sassy and challenging a bit, which I love. Like I love that type of energy. And so I remember after they like did their intros and kind of were familiar with us, by the time then it was my turn, I felt like I had a glimpse of their vibe or personality. It wasn't like I was just going into the room for the first time without knowing that. Um and I just did my audition, and I remember they just like took a pause after and said thank you. That was it. And I was like, oh God, that must have been so bad that they were like, next.
Yeah.
Because they didn't work with me. They literally, that's literally all they said. They
That's
said, thank you.
exactly what happened to me, right?
Really?
Just two monologues, and they were like beat, and then they said thank you.
That was it. I was
Thank
like, okay, I'm just gonna go and cry more now. And then I didn't hear back because their audition for that was just that, and then you would hear later on if you make it to their callback weekend. So I didn't hear anything, did my whole other schools, and then got back to Vancouver, went straight into a show. So I just like was like, that's done. I did that. Bye. And then when I did the callback weekend, that's when I knew. I was like there, and the 2 days that we had of like taking these different workshops, really meeting all the different faculty members, the other students, I remember very like viscerally feeling after the first day that night being like, oh, I really, really, really hope that I get in, because I'm already feeling the type of work that I want in training. Like it was more that it was like, I think it was because they were leading us through courses, like classes that we might take basically. And I was like, the level of attention and rigor that the profs had, their personalities, the way that all of them worked as a team too was really interesting. And seeing their different personalities and how they taught, and then feeling for me already how I was already approaching things differently. Like there was so much growth even in that. I was like, I'm just taking master classes.
Just you're like literally in the audition, you're growing as an artist.
Yeah.
It feels like
Yeah.
a workshop. It feels like a masterclass. I think that feeling, it doesn't come, you can't like force it. And for some people it occurs at this school, and for some people it occurs at this school. But like there is some sort of, I call it grace. There's some sort of grace, or some people call it luck, where it like meets with your preparation. And at that evening, it was just like, yep,
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, I remember
you
I'm
settled in.
making myself sound like I cry all the time, but I also remember I started crying, but it was happy tears. It was very like, oh, I feel really energized and really good, and really like I'm finally in a place where I feel like I'm really doing my own growth, and I love it. So it was just, I was just happy. Um, and so then I left being like, that was an amazing experience regardless. I really hope I get in, but also worth it, just worth it for the master classes. And so I knew if I got in that that's where I wanted to go. Yeah.
And so when did you find out?
I found out, um, oh my gosh, yeah. I found, I on the side of doing like theater acting stuff, I also do something called standardized patient work, which is actors who pretend to be patients for different
That's
trainings, like all of that. And so I was doing a one group for caregivers who are caretaking for people with dementia. And so I was literally um, in a session where I was acting as though I had dementia with this person. And I remember you're not supposed to have your phones with you, but it was right before the break. And I had my phone and I saw that it was through an email. They told me they didn't call me. So I saw the email and it said like, congratulations, exceptions. And I remember being like 2 seconds of joy. And then like instantly I was like, not the time nor the place, go back. And so I just like felt it and boom, I was like, nope, back here. And so it took me like, once the break happened and everything, then I was like, wow, that just happened. But it wasn't until like that night that I was like able to let myself feel anything because I was so like,
you
I
were
can't
zoned
go
in.
there.
You were acting the shit out of that.
I can't go there. I was like, but yeah. So that was like like it was, yeah, email. And I remember it's always those moments, right? Because before I was constantly checking and like stressed and was like, I need to take my mail app off my phone so that I don't even check all the time. And then right when I'm not checking and distracted and not thinking about it, boom.
Well, amazing. That must have been an amazing feeling.
Yeah, it was more than anything too, like just validating because I had such an incredible experience that I was like, I hope they had an incredible experience because if not, like, ooh, but yeah, so it felt validating.
Very cool. So cool. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Thank you for asking.
Oh man, it's a pleasure. I mean, to reflect on your journey is valuable, but also it's super valuable for us.
Yeah.
Everyone's journey is unique, but
Yes.
when you listen to a lot of these voices and a lot of these stories, sometimes you can find through lines that help you stay on track. And I think
Yes, absolutely.
things. I'm sure you had that experience too. You heard other people's stories that we shared with you and everything like that. Was there one thing in your coaching process or in your, acceptance accelerator or whatever that you felt like was a light bulb moment or like a standout experience?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I remember, hmm, um, I think it was around November, mid-November or beginning of December, where um, with the accelerator program, there was a lot of like it's not just the coaching. Obviously, there's like the workshops and the talks, and I remember uh, and my own stress that around December I was getting very overwhelmed with all the other aspects of applying for grad school, especially as a international student. And I remember um, thinking and feeling that I had all the support. And when I was doing the coachings, I would have a lot of fun and I would go to the talks and the workshops and I would love it. But then I would leave and I would feel super stressed and super anxious and like just not enjoy any of it. And so I was like, okay, why is it that when I'm by myself, I don't have fun? But when I'm with other people, it seems to be okay and like manageable and kind of de-escalated. And then it dawned on me that like I really needed to work on that because um because no one's asking me. I think I mentioned this to you, but I was like, literally no one in my life is asking me to be an actor or get an MFA or be in theater at all. So it has to be for me and it has to be something that I by myself can develop a relationship with, that I love and that I'm doing it intentionally. And so I remember thinking like, how am I going to imbue the positivity or like the encouragement and the community that I've made and I'm here, but also be able to actually do it by myself when I'm by myself as well. Um, and that shifted. It really, I genuinely am like, I feel like even if I didn't get into grad school, um, there's been like such a shift for me in terms of um, being more secure in myself of wanting to do this for me, with less of the kind of noise of being like, yeah, why, if I'm not enjoying it, why am I doing it? Basically.
Yeah.
By myself too. Like obviously it's always great with coaches and everything, but also like if I'm just by myself thinking about my career and acting, like it's for me. So I should be able to hold it for myself as well.
That's incredible. Yeah. I mean, that helps you so much, especially obviously after grad school when you are kind of in the industry on your own, like having that ability to have that process that's fruitful as opposed to destructive, is super helpful.
Yeah.
So
What I was also thinking was I this is more practical. This is like a very logistical thing, but I really found a system for I really spaced out all of my coaching sessions, and I made sure that each coaching session worked a different monologue, even if I felt like that monologue wasn't ready or that I hadn't worked on it enough. And I made very accurate like plans, like almost like class plans for myself of what I wanted to achieve in that session, so that then when I came in, um, I really felt like I got to use that hour to the best of my ability. Like I was already warmed up, I had already been working on it, I already had my questions ready. And what was great is that then everyone who was coaching me could then, I just felt like our coaching sessions could go up a level, because then it was like, oh, sweet, you've done that. Cool. Like, let's do this now. So it was just, it felt like even if it was my first time meeting with a Nula or something, that then I could feel like, oh, we've actually been working for longer because I'm at here right now.
mhm.
So that on a practical level, really helpful to schedule myself with the sessions in between so that I had time. And on a more emotional, spiritual level, I would say on the same track of what I was saying before, like it's really an individual growth process. And so I'm almost like I telling all my actor friends, I was like, I think everyone should just audition for grad schools because it's a terrifying process. You have to like articulate in words, why you're doing what you're doing in your life and what the purpose of you is, which no one else has to figure out. Then you have to like give your like a vulnerability all the time. Then you're, like I was like, it's actually incredibly um challenging. And then when you do it, you're like, wow, I did that. And I was able to still connect with myself and love it. So any other audition seems really easy.
It's
Truly.
so true. So
I was
true.
like, if you've done grad
It's a
school
great
auditions,
perspective.
you've been like, seen by 10 faculty in a line while you're just like exhausted and don't know what to do. Like, you can
It's
take anything. Like, it's,
moments that are like, like you said earlier, you have these moments where you like work really hard for the moment and it doesn't happen. And then the other times where you're just like, did this just happen? Did I just get to the next round? Like it's just insane. But you also, I think I want to definitely ride the line here because that's not to imply that people shouldn't prepare.
no, yeah, no, I prepped like
The
crazy.
only reason why the work was quality uh,
I
in those,
prepped a lot.
yeah, because you were so dedicated. You were always
Yeah,
present on those, like you said, those sessions and those calls
yeah.
and everything. So your enthusiasm was palpable and you're clearly passionate about this work. So it was a pleasure.
Oh, And I do have one more thing because I remember thinking about this because I saw an interview with someone else that you were interviewing. I can't remember their name, and they were talking about their process and how they would work on it like a little bit every day. And I remember hearing that and going, "Oh God, I'm not doing that. So clearly I'm not working hard enough." But then I remembered thinking, and I just say this for anyone who's watching, that even if I wasn't like up on my feet um doing the monologue, there was always like I was always thinking about it. And so I started to reshape how I was judging myself basically and was like, oh, me just thinking about it and kind of being in that world and questioning intentions and kind of just being in it is also putting in the work or putting in the hours, you know? So if there was 2 days out of the week where I was, or a full week even where I was like, I'm not doing it. I would be like, it's okay though, because it's not like I haven't thought about it. It's not like I haven't read it. It's not like I haven't thought about the atmosphere, you know? So it's all there's all of these other components that are also doing the work, not just
Focus is
yeah.
possible. You know, like distraction is what you don't want, but you're
Yeah.
not distracted. You're just in a flow that
Yeah.
ebbs and flows. And you were listening to yourself. So
Yeah.
couldn't be more proud. I'm very excited for
Oh,
you. I lived in LA for 10 years. I think you're gonna have a
I
friggin'
know.
blast. Uh,
Yes, sun. I just want sun.
gosh, yeah, it's gonna be great. And then we'll check in with you maybe after, a year or
Oh
two,
my
see
gosh,
how you like the
yes.
training, all that stuff. Of course, you can, if you have anything else to say, come on the YouTube channel, or
Great.
write a blog or whatever. Uh, we support you and we want to hear anything you have to say to our audience. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, awesome. No, I'm super grateful. I'm super happy that I had the support. It was invaluable, truly, or else I would have been just more lost.
You are golden. All right, Montse. Well, have a
Okay.
good day and we'll talk soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.